Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Caleb Gordon Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb Gordon. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be a part of the program today. What would it look like if the church reclaimed its masculine edge? That's a legitimate question, right? What would it look like? My guest, Mr. Kyle Thompson, dives headlong right into the middle of this topic. Kyle is the host of Undaunted Life, a man's podcast that absolutely pulls no punches when it comes to true biblical masculine Christianity. He does not sugarcoat a single solitary thing. He goes straight for the heart of what men need to be hearing and what men need to be doing in the church. And I believe this conversation is exactly the jolt and the arm many churches have been missing. And I pray that this blesses, encourages, and challenges you this week. Welcome to the Caleb Gordon Podcast, Mr. Kyle Thompson. How in the world are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing all right. I mean, we can update everybody when we're done with this, but as of right now, everything's going okay.
I love it. Everything's good. Your podcast came across my algorithm. So this is a history of how I found you. This is how we'll start this thing. And you had Matt Chandler on your podcast, and I listened. That was my first episode, and then I just did a deep dive, and holy smoke, brother. I have been doing men's ministry for almost 20 years, and I absolutely love that you have a heart to reach men and disciple men. And so that's how I got into this thing. Just history there.
All right. Appreciate you letting me know.
Yeah, sweet. Okay, so let me ask you this. Give us a sort of a 30,000 foot view of who Kyle is and what your heartbeat is.
Yeah, we'll just get right into what everyone's probably going to care about, which is not my upbringing, but how I got into kind of the whole men's ministry space. The whole thing was I had kind of a normal Oklahoma upbringing where, basically you're born on the precious red clay of Oklahoma and your parents listen to country music and occasionally vote Republican. So you get to go to heaven because God is pro all of those things. And so when I was 15 or so, I started going to church on my own. Because like most families in Oklahoma, we had Bibles around, but there was like, an inch of dust on the top of it that you had to blow off anytime you had to take a picture with it or something like that,
Right.
or take it in for Easter or Christmas. And so when I'm 15, I become a Christian, and it was at that time, I'm learning what it means to be a Christian, but I'm also trying to figure out what does it mean to be a man. And I've talked about this a lot, but I found that there was a delineation between those two things. And so if you wanted to be a man, you had to go outside the church to men that were doing man stuff. And if you wanted to be godly, you had to be inside the church, with a bunch of guys wearing khakis and their shirts tucked in and limp handshakes and, putting their hands on your shoulder every time they talk to you. And that was where the godly men were. And I saw that as a deep chasm between the two groups. Yeah. It wasn't until I got into my 20s when I started to really read the Gospels for myself and to really understand the personality of the Jesus as described in the Gospel accounts of his life, or at least what we see from the New Testament. And I came to the conclusion, this seemed like a pretty rough dude, right? This was a Middle Eastern Jewish construction worker that didn't really seem to care too much about how everyone felt about the things that he was saying. But that was when I started to determine, man, Jesus is the ultimate man, but when you think of manly men, you don't think of Jesus. And why is that? And so that led me to the men's ministry space. And the men's ministry space can suck really bad in a lot of different ways, because a lot of men's ministries are just women's ministries that have been repackaged for men. And so it's like, oh, we really care about the men's heart. Hey, can you all come to this room and we're all just going to sit in a circle and talk to each other? And by the way, these are guys that you don't know. These are guys that, you've never accomplished anything with. You don't trust them. You don't know if you can trust them, but hey, let's just to get together and chat. And hey, just so we can take this off the rails from the very, very beginning, this happened recently. So you okay with me flowing just a little bit?
Yeah, go for it, man.
I'm in my own Sunday school class, right?
Yes.
And this is a Sunday school class with couples, that are young with kids like us, and older with kids that are graduated and gone and things like that. And this guy, bless his heart, he's like, hey guys, we're starting up our 6 a.m. Wednesday morning men's group again. And gosh, if you just want to go deep with some guys, and if you just really want to get in touch with your emotions and just really bare your soul to these other men, we'll be here at the church at 6 o'clock on Wednesdays. And we can't wait for you guys to be there. On the way home from church, I told my wife, I was like, he may as well have said, hey guys, show up to the church at 6 a.m. on Wednesdays. We're going to be rubbing our wieners together. And it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, guys, how is that a pitch? How is that a pitch that a guy like me or guys that are attracted to the stuff in my show, that's your pitch? Come here and go deep with guys, bare your soul to other men.
No.
I'm pro having deep relationships with other men, but men connect eyeball to eyeball
Come on.
after they've done something shoulder to shoulder. We're not women. There's a reason why we're different. And the guys that would be attracted to an environment like that are the guys that don't need that as much as the other guys that would never walk into a room like that. So there you go. Podcast over. I guess we can move on with our days.
I love it. It's fantastic. Exactly. I mean, you're not like that has been men's ministry, and it's usually we sit in a fellowship hall over breakfast. And I've done men's ministry that way for a while too, but I felt like there's a disconnect, I've been hanging out with some more rowdier Christians as of lately, and they're guys that are manly men who do things that are more, rather than sitting around with notebooks open and writing things out, we're involved in doing something. There's a project that needs to be accomplished, and that's how men connect. I mean, we got to build a deck, we got to paint a house, something that guys that are, okay, this is something I need to be involved in, I can help, it's tangible, I can get my hands on it. And I think that you're spot on, dude. Yeah. By the way, what part of Oklahoma are you in?
I live in Edmonds, just outside of Oklahoma City.
No, I'm up in Bartlesville. So
okay, very good.
so
Shout out.
look at us, Okies. Something you had mentioned on the podcast is having a king's table. Talk about what that looks like, what that means.
Yeah, so that's actually Matt Chandler's language. So King's Table is where, basically King David had guys in his life. Like he had a general that would just go to war, that was always down to fight for him. He had a guy that was willing to call him on his crap. He had a guy that just loved him for who he was and was there to support him. And, Joby Martin, another pastor friend of mine, he calls it mat carriers. So Mark II, these are guys that will carry your mat and destroy someone else's property in order to drop you through the roof to get you to the feet of Jesus. And in my world, I call it a foxhole.
Okay.
You need guys that are 3 a.m. friends and not 6 p.m. friends. That's the easiest way to describe it, because we all have guys that are available until about 6 p.m. So if you've got a question or you need advice or you need to move a refrigerator or you need an errand to be ran, until about 6 p.m. they're available to you.
Right.
But they're not available after that. Oh, life's too busy and things and this and that and whatever excuse. But who are those guys in your life where your life is falling apart at 3 a.m.? Because if you're calling another dude at 3 a.m., something's gone horribly wrong, right? The only people that call you at 3 a.m. are people that are in distress or people that are insane. And so it's 3 o'clock in the morning, your world's falling apart. Do you have guys that you can call? Because some people in your audience right now, I'm sure just hearing that scenario, they're like, oh, shoot, I don't have anyone to call.
Right.
Right. So it could be you get a bad diagnosis from a doctor. Your child gets a bad diagnosis. Maybe you found some text messages between your wife and some other dude and you don't know how to deal with it. Maybe your dog just died. Your dog was your best friend. Maybe your career is on the rocks. Maybe you've leveraged yourself in all these other different areas. You took some risk. You saw you're following God's calling and it just hasn't worked out for you. It's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're thinking about biting a bullet, right? Well, at that point, who are you calling? Who do you know is going to answer their phone, and not only answer their phone, you can hear them getting on their pants, clicking their pistol into the appendix position and rustling through the shed because they're grabbing a shovel because they assume, all right, Kyle's calling at 3 o'clock. We got to bury a body. We'll figure it out later. Like, again, I'm not saying do felonious murder with a bunch of guys in your life, but I am saying you have to have an idea of who are those guys in my life that would do those things for me. And here's the thing. I don't care about men's ministry anymore. Like I used to kind of tut and I was like, oh, we're a men's ministry. I don't care about it anymore because it's been so stained by terrible men's ministries. I care about man-friendly churches and dudes that are in godly community with one another. That's what I care about. Because at the end of the day, I do not care about your church's once a year beast feast thing where you get guys together, you have them eat chili, and then you bring a guy like me in to come and scream at them for 45 minutes to an hour, because that's not men's ministry, right? That might have a small effect on other people. And I will say, whenever I've spoken places, the Holy Spirit uses the words that I'm saying in order to bring people to the Father. And those are obviously very, very good things.
Yes.
But in addition to that, the problem that we see is that churches think they've checked the box now.
Yeah.
But think about it this way, guys. Think of church people that are listening to this right now. Can you work out on January 1st and check the box for exercise for the entire year? No, you freaking morons. You have to do this day in and day out. If you have a group of men, you have to meet weekly. Why? Because if you meet monthly and a guy misses once, they didn't miss 1 month, they've now missed 2 months. And if they miss again, they've missed a quarter of the year. And if you miss a quarter of the year, why even show back up? You're so far behind. So you got to meet regularly. The same thing about man-friendly churches. Are you singing songs in a key that men can hit? Are you singing songs with lyrics that are homoerotic in nature, or lyrics that make you think about the creator God of the universe as a general that you would want to follow into battle? When something goes wrong, like my 38-year-old buddy that died of a heart attack, who's got a wife and an 11-month-old daughter and a house full of projects that hadn't quite been finished yet because he was too busy serving other families, do you have guys standing ready to finish the deck,
Come
to
on.
finish the electrical, to build the shed, to do the things? When a tornado happens in Oklahoma and a town like Sulphur is wiped off the map, does your church have a shed full of chainsaws and shovels and work gloves ready to go so that your men can be activated to go be the hands and feet of the Lord? Save this men's ministry stuff. I want man-friendly churches.
Ooh, gosh. Now you guys know why I like this guy. Holy smoke. This resonates with me because I have a really good friend. He lives in the Edmond area. His name's Dave Melhoff, and he'd be in the background just screaming, yes, 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 because he's been saying for years, we've been sitting too long on our blessed assurance. That's the
Yeah.
kind that's the kind word.
Yeah, I get it.
And we're not doing the things that we need to do, and we have these rah-rah sessions, which I'm not against events. I like having events. Dave would be very much against events.
Yeah.
But I'm not against them, but I am for regular. I think change happens when you're in a living room, when you're
We're
at the
not
kitchen
against
table.
them. They just need to be in the right category. And the category is not, hey, this is men's ministry and this is enough. It is
Mhm.
a supplement. It should be a supplement to everything else you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, having guys in your home on a regular basis, sitting out back grilling burgers and hanging out together and talking about the things of life, and then maybe even doing something together in a project setting, I think is more beneficial than just going once a month or once a week, or I'm sorry, once a quarter to a Bible study that is basically a women's ministry repackaged. I love how you
Well,
said that.
and here's the thing, Caleb. You got to be real honest. Like, so my group, we get together weekly and we do jujitsu. Now, we are all reading the same book at the same time, typically. And so we discuss the book and the things that we're learning. And then we do a workout that's, hard for some and not for others, but it's a workout nonetheless. And then we train jujitsu. The thing is obviously if everyone in your crew is 65 years old, jujitsu is probably not going to be at the top of the list of hobbies that you're going to partake. But I know
Right.
guys that have started their jujitsu journey in their mid 50s. And
Yeah.
so it's not too late for everybody. I will say this though, you learn something about other men when you watch them do hard things and you
Yeah.
watch how they respond when things don't go their way.
Yes.
Because if I catch you in a guillotine and you throw a fit and you go cussing and slamming things off the mat and all this kind of stuff, it tells me a little bit about you. Because I used to be
Yes.
that guy and I had to get that part of me kind of under control, right? Because that's ego,
Yeah.
right? That's ego, and that's like low self-worth and all these other negative things and things like that. But whether it's a rucking club or you do CrossFit workouts together or something physical, you can see who the quitters are.
Yeah.
The guys that when the round gets hard or when the workout gets hard or when things get the slightest bit uncomfortable, they quit. Well, guess what? That gives me a hint as to whether or not I can rely on you whenever the bullets start flying. And I use that term, somewhat tongue in cheek, but there might be a day where the bullets are flying. And can you depend on this guy, or is that guy going to be pissing his pants down in the bottom of the cellar? And so those are the things that you don't figure out who those guys are by just doing Bible study. And I'm not anti-Bible study. We have a Bible study podcast every Sunday that people around the globe are using as supplementation for their personal men's groups and for their churches. I'm pro those things.
Yeah.
But until you accomplish difficult things with those people, whether it's projects or, physical things or something like that, you can't really know if they're going to be there for you when everything gets kinetic.
Yeah, man, it's so good. So what, one of the things that you say you meet weekly and you have this workout thing. I got a guy that's still trying to convince me to join his jujitsu club, and I'm nervous about that because I mean I look at
Why?
the size because I am not strong on any level,
Do you
and
get strong by doing things that keep you weak?
oh gosh, okay, fine. Look at you pulling me out. All right, no, you're 100% right. You're not wrong.
That's
Um,
like saying I can't go to the restaurant because I'm hungry.
Yeah, fair enough. I made the excuse at the beginning of the year about my weight, and I started a journey of that. And now I've lost 55 pounds. So I mean, that's I guess a good start. But yeah,
Good for you.
I need to punch in there and get after it. But what's one of the most important things that you would say that that men in the church need to be doing?
Shoot, it's going to sound a little bit weird considering what you just said. Probably something like jujitsu.
Okay.
And the reason is because here's the weird thing about jujitsu. And I'm a brown belt. I've been doing it for, going on 8 years. It's a major part of my life now. There's nothing I've ever found in my life that is so challenging mentally and physically, but also produces resilience like jujitsu.
Yeah.
And here's one of the main reasons, because we all grew up, Caleb, with that guy that was just God's gift to everything athletic, right?
Right.
First time he picked up a baseball bat, crank, home run. First time he picked up
Right.
a basketball, swish, three-pointer. First time he picked up a skateboard, he's messing around, an hour later, he's kick flipping and doing all kinds of crazy Tony Hawk stuff, right?
Yep.
You can't do that with jujitsu. It doesn't work like that. We've had NFL athletes in their early 20s, in their physical primes, walk into our gym and get smashed to pieces by guys that are a little bit out of shape, but have been training jujitsu for 4 or 5 years. And they
Wow.
don't understand their entire life. They've been just throwing people around and physically dominating people. And then they get in there and it's like, well, you can accidentally make contact with a baseball. I mean, hitting a round baseball or a spherical baseball with a round bat squarely doesn't even make sense to say, but you can accidentally swing and hit it, right?
Right.
And here's the other thing. Punching, you can close your eyes and throw your fist as hard as you can. And if you land on the button, you're going to knock somebody out.
Sure.
But you're not going to accidentally triangle me. You're not going to accidentally double leg and take down a guy like me. It's not going to work out for you. You have to go and just continue taking your licks. And guess what? There are hammers and there are nails, and you will be the nail for basically 99.9% of your jiu-jitsu life until you start getting further in. I was about 5 years in before I felt like, okay, I could probably handle just about anybody in a street fight. Unless they're like, Bob Sapp, 400 pounds with abs and, juice to the gills. I'm
Right.
probably going to have some issues with a guy like that. Hopefully I can outlast because his gas tank's not going to be there. But something like jiu-jitsu, regardless of the age you are, if you come in with ego, it's going to kill that. If you come in a little bit out of shape, a little bit weak, a little bit inflexible, in order to get better at it, you're going to have to get better in those areas.
Yeah.
And here's the thing with a lot of church guys. They've got soft hands and even softer countenances. And so it's like, if I need a guy to pray for me, if I need a recommendation for a good book from a Christian bookstore, yeah, I may go to one of these doofs, one of these doughy guys at the churches. But when I need a dude, like in the moment, I need a dude to be there for me. I need a guy in a phalanx that I am going to be protecting with my shield because he is to my left. Or if he's on my right, he's got to be protecting me with his shield. I need to know that he's not going to run away.
Come on.
And I don't get any hints with that based on how they pray out loud or the type of books that they're going to recommend.
Yeah.
And so I would say in general, men in churches are soft because churches have become places where soft men are attracted to. Because, this gets into a lot of different history, but let's go back to the world wars and let's go back to the Industrial Revolution. All the virile, strong men were either dying on some godforsaken field in the middle of Europe, or they were underground for, 18 hours a day working these insane shifts.
Yeah.
And so the virile, strong, young men were not leading inside the churches. And so you had these men that were a little bit more effeminate in their countenance that are pastors or priests or something like that. And all of a sudden they're looking out into their congregations and they see women, children, and then old and sickly men or weak men or things like that. So the sermon content starts to bend way more towards grace and not a whole lot about truth. The songs that are being sung are not these things that men would have fun singing. It's about feelings and how we're somehow the point and how, the Bible is about us and how every hymn is somehow about us and not the creator God of the universe and his triune nature. And so when that happens, you will only be a successful church guy if you fall into a more effeminate category. And we see that modeled from the pulpit. You have effeminate men that don't want a bunch of testosterone men filled around them because it's going to make them feel like less of a man. And so they continue to produce a product that may as well be a blinking neon sign that says, men, this is not for you. And you know how it is. When a man does not feel appreciated and when a man does not feel needed or desired, he will go somewhere where he can get things done or will feel desired.
Yes.
And so if you're a woman out there and you're listening to this and I haven't, pissed you off at this point, this will piss you off. Well, guess what? If you don't make your man feel loved and respected and needed, he might end up going to that gal at work that laughs at his jokes, or he might end up, retreating to his man cave more often. He might end up, going and shooting his bow more often than he needs to. Because if
Yep.
a man's not needed on a Sunday morning, he will go somewhere where he does feel that way.
Oh man, so good. Man, this is the reason this resonates with me is because I feel like this is where we are in the church. We have so many guys who don't feel it's needed, and so in fact, I've had conversations with guys within the last year that said, "Yeah, that church is not for men; it's for women and children." And I'm like, that's wrong. If you look at the idea here, that the church has been built to be masculine, and it needs to return to the masculine spirit, because and this is where people freak out and they're like, oh wait, no, Caleb, we need to focus on the women and children. I'm like, okay, that's fantastic, but if you do that, the percentage that the rest of the family shows up is way down the rung. But if you get the man involved and you get them into a position where they feel like they should be there, almost 93% of the time, this is the statistic, the women and the children follow. So if you get the man, you get the family. And so
it's actually worse than that, because it's about disorder more than it's about statistics. And this is what I
yes,
mean, because men have been given the responsibility of headship over their families,
yes,
right? And so if the men are not catechizing their children or discipling and leading their wife and their children, well,
come on.
someone's going to, and it's
Mm-hmm.
probably going to be the culture. And
Yes,
who runs the culture? Satan or
Satan,
God, right? God is ultimately in control,
ultimately.
but Satan has control over all these different parts of
Prince
culture.
the power of the
Like
air.
whether, yeah, right. I mean, Satan is upstream from politics. He's upstream from entertainment. He's upstream from, basically gathering everyone's attention. And so if you as a church, this is one of the most nefarious things about church, because I'm not anti-church. One of the first things I tell
Nope.
guys to do is to get involved with a local church, to not walk in thinking, how can this church serve me? But how can I serve this church? Go somewhere where the word is being exposited. Don't go to a church where it's just basically life lessons with a few Bible verses sprinkled over the
Sprinkled.
top so
Come
that the
on.
church can keep their tax exempt status. But in these exact scenarios, you need to look for a place where the men are involved and where the people are focusing on the men, because what churches will do is on Mother's Day, they will basically make the women feel like they're not sinners. The women basically float out on clouds of
Yep.
unicorn farts because they're so amazing. But then on Father's Day,
You
they have the
moron.
temerity to destroy fathers on Father's Day for not stepping up. And yet they spend the next 364 days of the year doing nothing to try to engage and serve the men. Suck it. I'm not for it.
Come on. Good grief, man. That's amazing. Sorry, I'm not trying to like blow sunshine at you, but man, this is a shot of just, I love this, because we need to hear this. And the church, if you can find a church that's committed to masculinity, it is going to thrive in that community. And I think it's just going to be a juggernaut for the kingdom. And I'm just, oh man.
Well,
Um,
Caleb, let's look at this anecdotally. You walk into a household where the man is strong. He's got his crap together. He's got his business in order. He's got his affairs in order. Is his wife and are his children, are they living as if they're under some sort of oppressive regime?
Never
As if
seen
they're
it.
like, oh my gosh, what? No, no. When a guy is ordered spiritually, mentally, and physically, when he's showing resilience in those three areas, his wife is solid. His kids are squared away. Doesn't mean that they're perfect, but
Right.
they are living their best life because they are living without the anxiety of having a weak man at the head of the house. Because when
Good
you have a
grief.
weak man at the head of the house, the woman feels more pressure to perform. In other
Perform.
words, she feels more pressure to be the man because she didn't marry one. And the children, if it's a little girl, she's looking at this beta male thinking, okay, I guess that's the best I can look for when it comes to my turn to get married to some schlub, some, dude that's just looking at porn and playing fantasy football, not paying attention to me. And then the young man sees the exact same thing. Oh, dad's fat. I guess I'm going to be fat. Oh, dad doesn't take care of himself. I guess I don't need to take care of myself. Dad's never read a book. I guess I never need to read a book. And you see those things happen. Again, it's about right ordering. As a pastor, according to the book of Hebrews, they're going to have to give an account someday for how they have shepherded their flock, not
Mm.
how many followers they have on Instagram and not how many campuses they've launched. And guess what? If the men in your congregations are not catechizing their children and discipling their wives and their children in the anecdotal micro sense in their own households, you're going to have to give an account someday. And I don't want to be there for it.
Yeah, no doubt. It's terrifying to think about. Okay, so speak to the other side of that. When a guy hears this, he's like, okay, so I need to get in there. I just need to become this just raw, just an ogre that leads with a steel fist, and I'm gonna run my household, and it's my way or the highway, woman or kid. How do you speak to a guy that does that? Because maybe they hear this and they go the complete opposite. They've been effeminate. They've been sort of kind of the hands off,
Yep.
and they've flown rather than fight, and now they've gone into the fight mode. But it's not fighting for their spouse and their kids, but they're fighting against it. Speak to that. How do you deal
So
with
we
that?
have to look at the ultimate example of perfect manhood, and that's the person of Jesus.
Mm,
The problem is we've declawed the Lion of Judah, right?
yes.
So we only talk about the Lamb of God. We don't talk about the Lion of Judah because he's scary. We don't talk about we talk about grace because
Yes.
sometimes when you talk about truth, it's going to hurt people's feelings. And we've gotten this idea, this is not real Christianity, this is cultural Christianity, that we need to tolerate people's sin.
Yes.
Sorry, but tolerance of sin is not a biblical doctrine or a biblical ethic. We get that from culture. So whenever someone says, "Yeah, you guy and that other guy, y'all aren't actually married. Like I know you have a marriage certificate, but in the eyes of God, you're not married." You're so bigoted. You're so judgmental. I thought Christians were just supposed to love and tolerate. It's like, no. You might try reading the New Testament for yourself, and you might end up reading the entire Bible and get an idea of how God feels about sin. Because you have pastors out there that say God only whispers about sexual sin. I'm pretty sure that it was pretty loud when Sodom and Gomorrah was being destroyed by
Yeah.
angels. And so to that man who hears this and goes full aggro, nah, man, that's not it either. Jesus came fully grace and truth.
Yes.
Here's what that doesn't mean. He didn't come 60% grace and 40% truth. He didn't
Yes.
come 75-25. He didn't come 90-10. He came 100-100, right?
Yes.
He was tough, but he was tender.
Yes.
And he was a guy that violently drove out people and animals from the temple twice. We see that happened early in his ministry, like after his first miracle, and late in his ministry after he came back for Passion Week, right? So we see that in both places. But then also children wanted to be around him, right?
Right.
So if you're only aggro lying all the time, are children going to want to be around you? No.
No.
He was tough and he was tender. And so, guys, you have to learn where that is for you. So if you have more of a tender, feminine countenance, you're going to have to yank yourself to the tough, masculine side more often. Same in the opposite. If you're more wired for masculine dominance and those types of things, you're going to have to pull yourself to the tender, grace-filled side.
Yes.
And the only way that you're going to be in the Lord's calling is if you're in between those two extremes.
Yep.
And so, yeah, this is not your excuse to walk into the house and be like, all right, honey, I'm done being a pussy and we're going to start doing things my way. And here's how we're going to do it. And here's our 10-step process for me to, that's not going to work, player. You're going to have to get your wife on board with this, with these changes that she's going to be seeing. And I'm assuming she's going to like it. And the same thing with your kids. If you've been
Yeah.
the passive, doughy dad all this time, and then you start getting in the game, that's going to be an important thing for your kids to see. And one last thing I'll say on this, Caleb, is if you've been on the sidelines this entire time and now you get in the game, now you've activated Satan and his demons.
Come on.
So
They're
I
gonna come
told
after
some
you.
guys that I've been coaching, hey guys, the moment you sign up for this, like Satan's going to be all over you. He's going to be all over your wife. He's going to be all over your kids. He's going to be all over your business. He's going to be all over your finances. He's going to be all over everything because you've been sitting on the couch getting fat. You've been doing the typical American diet of food and spiritualism, and that's not healthy, right? It's all processed nonsense. Now we're about to get into some red meat. And wouldn't you know it, guys are experiencing some issues. I was like,
Yeah.
guys, do you remember whenever I said this? Do you remember when I said
Coming.
this is going to happen? It doesn't mean I'm a prophet. It doesn't mean I'm a savant. It means this is how it always goes.
Always
When you're
goes.
on the sidelines, Satan doesn't need to take you out because you've taken yourself out with
Come on.
malaise and this life of comfort that you think that you are owed. But when you get in the game, guys, it's coming for you. So batten down the hatchets and make sure you got guys on your left and your right that are going to support you.
Yeah, I love that. And having those guys on the left and right, having a community, because you mentioned at the beginning of this, people, oh, we need to do life together, and you come to church and do life. There was a video reel that was out recently that just sort of kind of mocks the idea of church, where they were like, oh, we need to be in circles, not rows, and we're going to do life together. And people say, well, the idea of doing life together is not coming together once a week. And it's
Right.
not.
Well, what does that mean?
It,
In its best form, what does do life together mean? Because for some people, Caleb, they mean getting together for a potluck. For some people, they mean getting together for Sunday school. But
Define the
guess
day.
what?
Yep.
If your kid's gone prodigal, that's a little weird.
That's a
I don't
tough
want to
one.
be too judgy, and I don't want to drop myself into that situation. If you got a guy in your crew that is cheating on his spouse or something like that,
Mm.
I don't really want to.
I don't want to talk about that one.
Maybe I'll tell him that I wouldn't do that, but hey, man, I can't judge. I'm gonna leave that up to God. It's like, no, you don't want to do life. You just want the bumper sticker.
Yeah, yeah, we need to move from the bumper sticker Christianity to the nitty gritty, and I think that's a majority of people in the church don't want to do nitty gritty together because
No.
when you say, "Hey, how are you doing?" and somebody starts to unpack how they're actually doing, you're like,
Yeah,
"Oh
like,
crap."
yeah.
I don't want to have this conversation. How can I please make a phone? This is my phone. Oh, my phone's ringing. I gotta go.
Hmm.
Because we don't want to hear those things. We just want to, it's the standard, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. Good.
Yep.
Well, blessed and highly favored. Oh, great. Me too. And we
Yep.
keep going. But when somebody just, you know what? This morning, I had this bomb dropped on me in my life about my job or my marriage or my kids. And you're like, listen, I was
Right.
just here to get a coffee. And so that we need men in our lives who are willing to be that, like you said, the 3 a.m. friend, who are willing to sit around the table and have the harder conversations and point you towards grace. But you got to, the bad news, the good news isn't good until you hear the bad news first. You got to be confronted with the bad news first. So, man, yeah. So if somebody's interested in finding out more about what you're doing or have you come speak at their event or do something along those lines, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so website is just www.undaunted.life. We have the #1 podcast for Christian men in the world, so you can find us on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, and that's where you can basically stay in touch with all the different news and happenings. I mean, we're closing in on 700 episodes, and so when people discover us, it's like, all right, they'll listen to the latest episode, then they'll go back to the first one and listen to me, a few, and then they'll come to the next latest one because we release about 3 times a week typically, and
Yeah.
so that's where you can keep up with everything we're doing.
Like your guest list is insane. Like I went through and I thought because shortly after I listened to your episode with Chandler, Chandler was coming to Tulsa and I just reached out to his people and actually got an interview with him and they said yes to me. I was shocked, but I was like, this is how this works. You gotta plug away and keep working at it. So I'm trying to build this podcast and you've been an inspiration. Just going back through and I was like, holy smoke, this brother is just banging these things out like a pro. So
Well,
love it.
that's you have to treat it like a pro because here's the thing: you can buy a $50 microphone and plug it into your laptop, and then all of a sudden you're a podcaster, right? But at the same time, it's like if you don't have a unique voice in the space
Come
that
on.
you're trying to speak into, then you should probably save it because I mean it's a lot of work. I mean, look, imagine staring at a blank screen 3 times a week and turning that into an hour's worth of content that people aren't going to skip. Like that's a skill and that's a gift that you have to be given from God. And then some people, they're celebrities, they don't really have anything interesting to say, but they have a lot of followers on Instagram, and so all of a sudden, poof, they've got this big podcast and things like that. And it kind of is what it is. But when I was recording the first few podcasts, when I had no listeners outside of my immediate family,
Yeah.
versus today, when again we're the #1 show in the category,
Yep.
I give the same level of effort because I'm working as unto the Lord. Because
Come on.
initially, whenever I was recording this alone in my closet downstairs and in my house with, basically a cheap mic and my old laptop, like I'm giving the same level of effort because it's like it's cathartic for me. I feel like I get to kind of work some of my own ideas and philosophies out. And I just don't feel any additional pressure now with all the eyeballs and attention because it's like I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say. And guess what?
Come
If
on.
you don't like it, there's 6 million shows out there, man. If I'm not
Go
your
find another
style,
one.
like imagine listening to a band and being like, I hate that band, and then continuing to listen to their album. It's like, okay, that just didn't hit your ear holes and your soul the way that the band intended for it. There's, millions of other options out there. So go find something that, tickles your fancy.
Come on. Love it. Well, I thank you so much for taking time to come on the show and share about what you're doing. And I'm definitely going to have you on again and in the future just to talk about masculine issues because that's my heartbeat is to see men come alive for the things of Christ. Would you dismiss us in prayer?
Yeah, absolutely. Heavenly Father, we come before you right now. We know that we're not worthy of the free gift of grace that you've offered us, but we are willingly here to accept it. And Lord, I just pray that the men that are listening to this will find that nugget, that rock in the shoe that will push them further towards you and would also push them to become the men that you have called them specifically to be. And that if
Yeah.
they need to repent of any of their sinful lifestyles and philosophies, that they would do that now, that they would not wait, that they would not hesitate. And Lord, we just thank you so much for all the blessings you've given us, especially for the ones that we cannot readily see. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Just wanted to say thank you to one of our amazing sponsors, Revo Financial. For many people, financial stewardship isn't just about smart financial decisions. It's about aligning those decisions with their faith and values. Revo Financial brings biblical wisdom to the financial planning and investment process. Whether you're planning for retirement, college, or special charitable strategies, Revo Financial helps you create a roadmap that aligns your spiritual values. Visit revofinancial.com and set up your complimentary one-on-one appointment today and start building a future that honors your faith. Revo Financial.